The sun hadn't risen yet, but Nick Madden was already pulling into his driveway. The overnight shift at the docks had ended early due to a malfunction with the cranes, something about a jammed mechanism. It was rare, but Nick didn't question blessings. All he wanted was to shower, make a strong cup of coffee, and maybe lie in bed next to his wife for a bit before she started her day. He stepped out of his pickup. The cold morning air bit at his neck, but he didn't shiver. The house loomed in the gray-blue light, silent and unassuming. Too silent. His boots barely made a sound against the wooden floor as he walked inside. He closed the door gently behind him. No music, no kitchen noise, no low hum of morning news, just stillness. Nick's brow furrowed. He dropped his keys into the ceramic bowl near the entryway. Ceramic with a chip on the side, the one Emma kept saying she'd replace but never did. He kicked off his boots, glanced around. The living room was pristine. Too pristine. Blankets folded, candles untouched, not a single coffee mug in sight. Then came a sound, faint, distant, the unmistakable rhythm of the shower running upstairs. She never showered this early, and if she did, why leave the door unlocked? He moved slowly, each step measured, as if his body already knew something his mind hadn't yet caught up with. The hallway creaked under his weight. The stairs gave a soft groan as he climbed. From the top of the landing, he could hear it more clearly now, the water pattering, bouncing off tile, and laughter. Light, familiar, Emma's, but layered with something else. Another voice. Male. Nick's jaw tightened. He walked toward the bathroom, his feet like anchors. The door was ajar. Steam spilled out in lazy waves, curling around the hallway light. A pair of jeans lay folded on the hallway bench. Not his. He never folded his clothes that neatly. Nick pushed the door open. Inside, through the fogged glass, he saw two figures. Emma's unmistakable silhouette, her back arched in that way he knew so well. And beside her, a man. No, not a man. Jake, his brother, his blood. Nick stood there, unmoving, watching, Emma's head tilted back as she laughed, water running down her neck. Jake said something, low, and she playfully splashed him. Intimacy, comfort, habit. Not a mistake. Something well-worn. They hadn't seen him yet. He reached forward as calmly as someone reaching for a light switch and closed the door. The latch clicked gently into place. Downstairs, he grabbed his boots and keys without a sound. Didn't slam the door. Didn't shout, didn't give them the satisfaction of his rage. In his truck, the world was still gray. Morning had not yet claimed the sky, but inside Nick Madden, a storm had already begun. Nick didn't go back home that night. He drove aimlessly for hours, the hum of the tires masking the chaos inside his mind. He ended up checking into a nondescript roadside motel an hour out of town, cash only, no questions asked. A place that smelled like bleach and old regrets. He laid on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about the way Jake's hand had curled around the back of Emma's neck. The familiarity of it, the years it must have taken to become that seamless. Instead, Nick thought about silence, how it could be louder than any scream. He left his phone off. Let them wonder. Let them text, call, panic, or not. It didn't matter. His presence would be missed eventually, but he would control how and when. He told work he was on assignment out of state, easy enough. He had time now, space, and a plan to build. Nick wasn't impulsive. That was Jake's specialty. Rush into things, fix them later with charm or excuses. Nick played the long game. He watched, he waited, and when the time came, he struck with precision. He returned to the house 2 days later, when he knew they'd both be gone. Emma would be at the cafe she sometimes freelanced from. Jake would be with his contractor crew across town. The house stood in sunlight, looking innocent. He let himself in quietly, moved like a ghost. First stop, the bookshelf in the study. The third shelf from the bottom, tucked behind dusty paperbacks, was the perfect place for a small hidden camera. He installed it smoothly, adjusting the angle just right to capture the living room and the base of the stairs. Another went behind the vase in the kitchen. One more in the hallway near the bathroom, placed high, unobtrusive, but angled for clarity. Everything legal. He was the homeowner. End of footage? His property. Then came the bedroom. Their bedroom. His and Emma's. He stood there a long time, just inside the door. The bed was made, pillows fluffed, her lavender perfume lingered faintly in the air, sweet and sharp. The betrayal didn't come with shouting or broken glass. It came in stillness. A knife slowly turning. Yeah, he didn't cry. Rage. He placed a fourth camera inside the closet, facing the full-length mirror, then walked to her nightstand. The drawer was unlocked. Inside, gum wrappers, a few receipts, and her journal. Burgundy leather, gold-edged pages, the kind of thing she guarded fiercely. But she'd left it behind, assuming he wouldn't be back so soon. Nick took it. That night, back at the motel, he read it cover to cover. It was all there. Moments she had written like confessions, some poetic, some cruel, doubts about the marriage, excitement over forbidden things, mentions of Jake and abstract metaphors that suddenly snapped into clarity the first time it happened, the second. The moment she realized she didn't feel guilty anymore. She hadn't destroyed the man she married with a single decision. She had peeled him away piece by piece, one lie at a time. Nick closed the journal. In the dim motel light, he didn't feel broken. He felt sharpened. The next day, he started editing. He went through the footage from the first few days, stitching together the moments they thought were private, laughter, intimacies, mocking tones when they said his name. Emma had once said Nick was too distant lately, too busy with work. Jake had replied that maybe he needed a wake-up call. They had no idea what kind of call was coming. Each clip, each line of her journal, each smile shared between two traitors, it was all becoming something now. Something exact, something final. Nick learned to disappear in plain sight. For 2 weeks, he moved like a shadow behind the scenes of his own life. His absence from the house became routine, explained by the fiction of a long-term consulting job out of state. Emma had mentioned it to friends once or twice, almost with relief. Jake still parked in the driveway when he visited, still acted like a man without fear. Neither of them suspected a thing. Nick made sure of it. He checked the camera feeds every night. The software synced perfectly to his secure hard drive, folders sorted by room and timestamp. The footage he collected wasn't lurid or dramatic. It was worse, banal, casual, comfortable. Jake cracking open a beer on the couch Nick had picked out. Emma dancing barefoot in the kitchen as Jake watched, shirtless, leaning on the counter like he belonged there. Nick watched everything in silence. He wasn't collecting evidence, he was collecting patterns, behaviors, speech. They talked about him more often than he expected, not with guilt, with amusement. Nick always hated loud music, Jake laughed one night, blasting something thumping through the speakers. Now the house finally feels alive. Emma had giggled, curling into his side. He never danced with me. You do. That's what I needed. What she needed. The same woman who once traced her fingers over Nick's temple scars from a childhood fall and called them beautiful, now dismissing him with the tone of someone discussing expired milk. The cuts didn't bleed, but they went deep. At night, Nick sat in the motel with his laptop and headphones, editing clips with surgical precision. He wasn't just splicing video, he was crafting a narrative, timelines, emotional arcs, contrasts. A project of pain, but also of control. He matched clips from the cameras with highlighted passages from Emma's journal, a quote about longing played over a shot of her kissing Jake in the hallway, a line about feeling free at last, juxtaposed with Jake lounging shirtless on Nick's side of the bed. Each segment carried weight, not rage, not bitterness, just truth, unavoidable, undeniable. And he didn't embellish, he didn't add music, just voices. Faces. Quiet damnation. Nick included one clip in particular near the end, a moment he almost deleted. Emma, alone, curled up on the couch with her diary, talking softly to herself. She read one of her own entries aloud. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Sometimes I wish I could be someone else entirely. Someone who didn't care who she hurt." That was the moment Nick decided how the story would end. He ordered custom USB drives. Matte black labeled only with the word play, each one carefully packed in a plain padded envelope, along with a printed letter written in his own hand. He'd make threats. He didn't plead. The letter was brief. "I won't ask why, I already know. You crossed a line I never will. This is not revenge. This is clarity, Nick." He sent them to 4 people, Emma's parents, Jake's ex-wife, his own attorney, and Emma's closest friend, Dana. She had always seemed a little too observant. He figured she'd watch it all the way through. Then he scheduled the family dinner. A text message, casual and clean. "Family gathering, our place this Friday, 7 p.m. Dress nice, I'll cook. Important night." Emma responded with a string of heart emojis. Jake, "Finally, you sure you're not dead? Lol, can't wait." Nick said nothing else. He went shopping. He prepared a roast, Emma's favorite, marinated exactly the way she liked, opened a bottle of red wine she once said reminded her of their honeymoon. The dining table was set with care, each place aligned with geometric perfection.
Candles.
Napkins, folded like origami. The living room lights dimmed to soft amber. Everything looked beautiful. A warm safe. He tested the projector one last time. The screen roll was perfectly hidden behind the curtain rod above the fireplace. A few clicks and it would lower. The video file sat waiting on a laptop in the next room. Autoplay, full volume, crisp resolution. A memory played in his head. Emma's voice, years ago. You notice everything, Nick. It's scary sometimes. You never forget anything. No, he didn't. At 6:55 p.m., the doorbell rang. Emma stepped in first wearing a deep green dress Nick had given her for their last anniversary. Jake followed, all teeth and swagger, smelling like cologne and cheap victory. Nick greeted them both with a calm smile. Glad you could make it. They laughed. Jake poured wine. Emma complimented the roast. No one noticed the camera still rolling behind the bookshelf. As they settled into their seats and the small talk flowed, Nick rose from the table and walked toward the fireplace. I put together something for us, he said, a little memory reel. Thought it'd be nice for tonight. He picked up the remote and pressed play. For 3 seconds, the screen above the fireplace remained black. Jake lifted his wine glass. Is this like a wedding slideshow thing, old baby pics? And then the screen flickered. No music, no fading titles, just grainy, clear footage from inside the house. The camera angle faced the living room, time-stamped from 2 weeks ago. Emma appeared on screen, barefoot dancing across the hardwood in one of Nick's old shirts. She twirled once, then dropped onto the couch beside Jake. Laughter, kisses, the unmistakable clink of a beer bottle. The room at the dinner table froze. Emma's hand clutched her wine glass. Jake tilted his head, unsure whether to smirk or panic. Then came the audio. So what if he finds out? Emma asked in the video, her voice light. Jake laughed. Nick, come on. Guy's practically allergic to confrontation. Emma leaned in, whispering, still caught by the hidden mic. I think he knows something. He's been distant. Quiet. Jake's voice turned mocking. He's always quiet. Doesn't mean he's smart. The guests weren't laughing. Emma's smile faltered as she glanced around the room. Her parents sat motionless, forks suspended midair. Dana looked down into her lap, cheeks draining of color. On screen, the scene changed. A clip from the kitchen, Emma pressed against Jake near the stove. She kissed him quickly, then muttered, he doesn't touch me like this anymore. Of a jump. Jake alone, digging through Nick's toolbox. He pulled out a key and waved it at the camera. We got it. Spare for the shed. Told you he keeps everything like it's sacred. Then came the voiceover. Nick's voice. Calm, steady, recorded. To betray someone inside their own home is to desecrate a sacred place. You didn't just break trust, you defiled it. I invited you both in. You turned love into mockery, loyalty into entertainment. More footage. Bedroom. Shadows moving under the covers. A laugh. Emma's diary entry read aloud in Nick's voice. Sometimes I wonder if I was ever truly in love with Nick, or if I just needed him until I didn't. Emma bolted up from her seat. Nick, stop it. This is insane. He didn't move. Jake stood too, but slower, jaw clenched, scanning the stunned crowd. Dude, you're out of your mind, he said. You bugged the house? You think this is normal? Nick turned toward him, expression blank. You slept in my bed, Jake. Ate my food, sat at my table while lying to my face. He walked to the head of the table and placed a stack of papers down. Divorce papers, signed and dated. Beside them, a USB drive. No more talking, no more pretending. The projector kept rolling. More laughter. Jokes made at Nick's expense. Emma referring to their marriage as a holding pattern. Jake mocking his work ethic, calling him robotic and emotionally constipated. Nick said nothing more. He poured himself a small glass of water, took a sip, and waited. The screen showed the final segment. Emma alone again, sitting at the edge of the bed, scribbling in her diary. Her voice, I don't know what's happening to me. I feel numb but free. If this is what being bad feels like, maybe I was never meant to be good. Silence. The screen faded to black. No applause. No one breathed. Emma was trembling now. You set us up. You've been recording us? What kind of sick? No, Nick interrupted quietly. I documented the truth. You gave it content. Jake grabbed his coat, jaw tight. You think this makes you noble? This is some twisted revenge fantasy. Nick tilted his head. No, Jake, revenge would have been fire or fists. This was a mirror. Emma's voice cracked. What do you want from us? Nick stepped back, eyes sweeping the room. Nothing. I just wanted everyone to see what I lived with, to know what love looks like when it rots from the inside. He left the papers where they lay, turned off the projector, and walked to the door. Emma called after him once. Nick, wait. He didn't. As he stepped out into the cool night, the hush of the shock dinner party hung behind him like fog. The house, his house, now echoed with what it truly was. Empty. He didn't slam the door. He didn't look back. The engine hummed beneath Nick's hands as he pulled out of the driveway for the last time. No sudden acceleration, no dramatic peel of tires, just a smooth, measured departure into the dark. The house shrank behind him in the rearview mirror, its silhouette softened by porch light and shadow, a place that once held warmth, now just walls and wood. Ghosts of laughter, of quiet mornings with coffee and shared silence clung to it like stale perfume. Nick didn't blink. He drove in silence for a while, the empty road unfolding like a ribbon through the dark. The radio was off, the air was cool enough that he cracked the window, letting the wind sting his cheek. It felt good. After 20 minutes, he pulled off the highway onto a scenic overlook. No cars, just the night and the faint shimmer of city lights in the valley below. He cut the engine and sat back. There was no rage left in him. Always space. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small voice recorder. Pressed play. A podcast episode began, one he'd queued up weeks ago but never listened to. A soft-spoken woman was talking about emotional boundaries, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, about the weight of betrayal. Nick stared out at the sky. Some wounds never close, the voice said, but wounds are not signs of weakness. They are proof you survived what was meant to break you. He exhaled, not sharply, not bitterly, just out. He thought about Emma's face at the table, the tears that never quite came, the panic disguised as indignation. He thought about Jake, arms crossed, too proud to look ashamed. Maybe still thinking he could talk his way out. Let him. Nick's war was over. The footage was already in trusted hands. The divorce filings were official. The house would be sold. He'd already arranged for a storage unit and a furnished sublet in another part of the state. Temporary, quiet, clean. A pause. Then the last part of the podcast. Something about rebuilding. Start small. Plant something. Make your own dinner. Make new routines. It's not about forgetting. It's about becoming. Nick shut it off. He sat for a while, letting the silence expand. The ache was still there, but dull now. Not a sharp blade, just a scar forming beneath the skin. A story his body would always remember. He reached into the center console and pulled out a pen and small notepad. He wrote one sentence. Next time I don't open the door so quickly. Then paused, added another line beneath it, but I still believe there's a next time. He smiled, barely. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something like curiosity. Nick turned the ignition, headlights washing the overlook in soft gold. The city lights blinked in the distance, uncaring, unknowing. He shifted into gear and eased back onto the road, the darkness parting ahead of him. Behind him, the house disappeared completely. No more messages, no more footage, no more explanations. Just the open road, stretching forward into whatever came next.